Welcome to Season 7, Episode 1 of The Sailing Show, the monthly podcast that will steer and inspire you along your sailing journey. I'm Abby Ehler. I've competed in the Volvo Ocean Race and worked shoreside with the America's Cup and Sail GP. I'm also a director of the Magenta Project, a charity organisation that is committed to developing pathways and generating opportunities for women in performance sailing. On this podcast, I'll be chatting to a wide range of women within the sailing community, including Olympic champions, ocean racers, change makers, and up-and-coming champions. On this episode, I'll be chatting to Caroline Boule, a Magenta Project Mentee who is on track to compete in her first Mini Transat campaign and has recently completed her first Atlantic crossing on board Sailing Poland the V65, one of the yachts that raced in the past Volvo Ocean Races. Now, if you're keen to find out more about the Mini Transat race itself, I'd encourage you to head to our last podcast episode where I chatted to Jamelia Tassan all about her first experience of the Mini Transat race itself. But back to this episode and my guest, Caroline, has sailed a range of dinghies and keelboats as a child, and while at university got into team racing as well as sailing the 29er. More recently, however, she has launched into the foiling Moth class, which has really struck a chord with her, combining her engineering skills and her love for sailing. I chat to Caroline as she travels back from Antigua, fresh from her first Atlantic crossing. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to hear all about it. But before we get to that, I thought it'd be great if you could just paint a picture to our listeners, a bit about yourself, a bit about your sailing background, and then we'll get into what's led to this transatlantic crossing. So over to you.
Hi, Abby. Thank you for having me. It's really great to be here and chat to you about my experience. So my name is Caroline. I'm 24. I'm French and Polish. I started sailing when I was really young in Poland on the lakes. And I spent my 18 first years actually in Poland, after which I moved to the UK and I started team racing there at university. I was at Imperial College and I just joined the university circuit and team race with the Imperial Sports team. And that's when I really started racing. So quite late actually. Before that, it was mainly laser sailing and other small boats. And I did some 29er sailing as well. And when I graduated, so at Imperial, I studied material science and nuclear engineering. After which I decided to do a PhD in Paris. So that's what I'm currently doing. I graduated in 2020, so I'm my second year of PhD. I'm doing a PhD in physics at École Polytechnique. I'm working on 2D materials. And on the same time, I started sailing more and more. So with my graduation, I also decided I was going to buy a Moth, which was very random. And all my friends were a bit confused by that decision. But because I worked a lot during the summers, I kind of made a bit of money on the side. So I just decided to put all my savings into that and bought my first one. And then eventually I went from event to event and decided to upgrade and buy other boats. And then was joined by a sponsor for my Moth sailing, which was an amazing opportunity for me to upgrade to a better boat, to the next set, and raise the world, because otherwise I wouldn't have the funds for it. And that's also when I'm at the Magenta Project, because we had a training organized, a female training camp organized just before the Moth Worlds. And I was really happy about that. It was a great opportunity for me to get to know all the other Moth sailing girls, because there's not many in the whole world. So for all of us to get together there was amazing. And I would still chat a lot and just help each other. Anyway, after the Worlds, which was in September last year, I went to see my sponsor to just give them a bit of feedback about how it went. And that's when we decided that together we wanted to start a new offshore project, which was the Mini Transat for 2023. So we started preparing together. Because of my Moth background, we both really wanted to do it on a foiling boat. But unfortunately, there's not many foiling boats on the market, the mini market. So I tried to buy the Pogo foiler, but it wasn't available. So we just decided to build a boat eventually. So that was another huge challenge for me. And I'm really happy they gave me the opportunity to do that, because as I'm also an engineer on the side, putting together both my engineering and my sailing skills was just the best that I could have tried, really. I was really happy to be able to be given the opportunity to do that. So yeah, in October, we launched this project. I contacted Sam Manuar, the architect, who decided to join me on that adventure, do it with me. And Benoit Marie, who's like an offshore sailor, decided to help as well with the design and just helping me to manage the whole project, because I don't have a lot of experience in that field. But it was definitely a really good decision, and we've started building it. So at the moment, we just actually finished the cockpit. It went under vacuum yesterday, so it should be done when we'll open it on Monday. It should be ready.
Wow, that's so exciting! Gosh, what a lot of big changes in what sounds like quite a short space of time. But amazing that you found such a great relationship with a sponsor, and to be able to sort of go on that journey together that sounds fantastic. So yeah, congratulations to you for
Thank you.
And holding on to them. And so to draw us back to this particular trip that you've just done, I'm guessing, how much offshore experience have you got? Prior to this Atlantic crossing, what had you done?
I didn't have any offshore experience at all. So it was actually quite funny, because I did tell Sailing Poland that I didn't have any offshore experience, but I don't think they knew to which point I didn't have any, because when we got there, they realized it was my first night offshore. So I was really, really new in the field, which is also why I'm really glad that I was able to do that, and that they gave me the opportunity to, because it's definitely much better to do my first transat with a crew, or especially with an experienced skipper and everything. I think I learned so much, and in considering that I want to do an transatlantic solo crossing, I think this is the best that could have happened to me first.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been very lucky to have found that opportunity, and a bit of a baptism of fire, because I'm sure there's many people that set off and then decide this is not for me. But I wanted to ask about what your expectations were prior to going across the Atlantic, and then what kind of changed by the time you got there.
So I think the main expectation or thing that was different for me was the fact that, everyone talks about the Atlantic like it's a huge deal, but actually it's just a very long sail. So I got there thinking, we're going to have huge waves, storms, like it's going to be difficult, but it was not very different from, inshore, offshore, like I would say. So like sailing around, like along the coast, sailing, but for much longer. Like, yeah, sure, like we had moments where the waves were a little bit longer, but it was like larger, but it was never like huge. There was not such a difference. So that was very strange for me. I really expected something much more difficult. Of course, I think we're quite lucky with the conditions. I'm sure it could have been worse. But we did have moments with like when the wind was above 30 knots, where it was really wavy. So we had a bit of everything. But still, like, I didn't find it that scary. I thought it could have been much more difficult. So I think there's like a bit of a myth around it, and everyone thinks, oh, wow, like it's the Atlantic. But it's more about how much it lasts, how long it is, the sail, than about the sail itself.
You can almost sort of build up a bit of a mental block about, oh God, you know, it's going to be this long, it's going to be really horrendous conditions. But I think the thing with sailing is really about, it's just being in that moment. You know, you get going, you get settled in at sea, and then you're always talking about the weather, so you know what conditions are coming, and then it's just a case of sort of you become a chameleon to adapt to the situations around you. And if there's more breeze coming, you can kind of just prepare yourself. And it's kind of like a gradual adaptation, whether that's taking reefs in or shaking reefs out. But I think it could be quite easy to build up a bit of a block about thinking too much, because you don't know what to expect. And then really it's just about taking one step at a time.
That's so true. So actually I was really stressed the night before I left, but as soon as I got to Lanzarote, so it was the night before I left my house, but when I got to Lanzarote, I met the people, I saw the boat, we started working on it, because we did like 2.5 days of boat work. I really calmed down. I realized it was fine, because I wasn't alone. The skipper had a lot of experience. He knew what he was doing. I saw the boat. I saw how we're going to leave, how everything was going to happen. It really calmed me down. I think my biggest fear was the fear of knowledge, of not knowing what was going to happen to me.
Exactly, because you're going into something that you've never done before. So, and in terms of as you went along, or as you landed in Antigua when you'd finally made it, I mean, what were the sort of things that you were like, oh gosh, is it a sense of achievement, or it wasn't that hard, it wasn't as hard as I expected, or what were your top level emotions or thoughts?
So I was really happy to arrive. I was kind of relieved at the end, because the last few days were quite long. So I really enjoyed there. It was really exciting. Everything was new. We're jibing often because we're quite close to the coast. I was learning loads of things, but in the middle there was far less happening. So I felt like we were kind of on pause for like a few days, because we didn't see any animals, we didn't see any boats. So it was a very strange feeling. 10 days short, but can also be quite long. So I think I was quite happy to arrive. The last few days were a bit difficult for me. So I was very happy. I felt like we achieved something quite big in the end. So I definitely had like this feeling of achievement, and was kind of relieved to arrive at the end as well, because we had a few gas issues. We didn't have enough gas at some points. So I think it's definitely time to arrive.
I think that's always the case when you're on a delivery or a race. It's like you're running down your supplies at the end, and it's always like, what's going to be the first thing to run out? Is it my clean clothes or food? Or and it's fantastic that you feel so positive about the experience. And obviously there's going to be a lot of skills that you can take across to your Mini Transat. And I'm guessing that was the real motivation for wanting to do this, is just to grab that opportunity and get as much experience as you can, particularly across the same race course that you'll be doing it in your Mini Transat. So were you able to sort of get hands-on with the nav, and what will you be able to take away from this?
I think there's loads of things. The fact that I didn't know anything gave me the possibility to learn so much about everything. So starting with the most like basic things, it's just life on board. It's actually really different to eat or freeze dries, to sleep or like differently, because we don't sleep the full night. We sleep 4 hours on, 4 hours off. During my mini, it'll be even shorter. But like even to learn how to manage this sleep, that's quite a big one, I think. Small things like hygiene, like going to the toilet. I think in the everyday life, I think there's actually a lot to learn. Then about the sailing as well. So I think I definitely improved in sailing in waves. I had obviously everyone sails in waves during dinghy sailing too, but I don't think it's the same. Well, these ones were much bigger and on a different boat as well. So I think that was definitely quite important and interesting. I learned a lot about different sails, because on my Moth I only have one sail. So the fact that we're changing quite often, and like learning which one to use in which conditions, I think that was really interesting. Obviously, I'm not going to have exactly the same rig on my Mini, but just the fact that I got some experience in offshore sailing in general, like different types of sails, just opens your mind really on different possibilities. You learn how to look at them, what to look for, what's wrong, what's right, like loads of things like that, which was definitely good. I think on a more like personal base, I also learned how to manage myself. Like, I think I was a bit stressed the first night because when we left, there was not a lot of wind. So it was a very good day to learn and get used to the boats and stuff. But as soon as we hit the first night, we got 30 knots straight away. So it was a very difficult first night. It was difficult to trust the others at the beginning when I was trying to sleep because I didn't know them. I didn't know how much experience people had. And everything feels very different inside of the boats. So there were moments when I thought the boat was going to break. It was horrible. But actually, I'd go outside and realize it was only 15 knots. So it feels really different inside. And I think that's also an important thing to learn because on my Mini, I'll be alone, but I'll have my autopilot. So I need to learn how to trust it as well, which might not be very easy at the beginning. So yeah, I think it was helming, trimming, loads of mental things. I think the list is very long, the things I learned.
Yeah.
It's definitely a really good experience.
That's an interesting one, though, about the sounds of the boat. And I think that's one thing that you really get attuned to with the more sailing that you do, particularly in bigger boats. And like you said, in a crude format where you have to learn to trust what's going on deck to be able to get the rest that you need. And it really is just understanding the noises of the boat, and you become attuned to what's a good noise and what's a bad noise. And
yes.
But you can't really explain to someone which would be which, but it's just something that you become accustomed to. So yeah, that's interesting.
Definitely.
And I think that's something that, and particularly with solo sailing, it does take a while to get into that rhythm and with your sleep pattern and eating, because your body clock's just completely thrown out of whack. So I guess that it's been a great experience to sort of have that exposure to it, but in a controlled environment with people around.
Exactly. I think I really struggled at the beginning because I didn't know when to eat, because at home it's always more or less at the right time. So I don't know, we have lunch between 12 and 2, and that's just how it is. Same for dinner between 7 and 9. It's just normal. But here, because we're 4 on, 4 off, I had no idea when I was supposed to eat. So I didn't really eat on the first day at all. And then people told me, I didn't even know at what point. Like, I just had no clue. And then people told me what they were doing. But yeah, it's a tricky one to get used to as well, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And sometimes, people find it really hard to adapt to freeze-dried food, and just, being able to cook at sea, particularly if it's, bumpy down below and it's not everyone's cup of tea. It takes a little bit of getting used to just to find your sea legs on that first day. And so, we've taken chatted about what you would take away from this in terms of your journey forwards. What would your advice to anyone that was kind of in a similar position, that's desperate to do a first long passage, what would be your words of advice?
I think they should just do it. I was hesitating a bit, I wasn't scared, I wasn't sure, but actually just sit on the experience. So just do it and see how it goes, and it's definitely going to go well. Also, I think it's really important during the crossing to not hesitate to ask questions and learn from those who are more experienced, because they know the things. They're not there, without a reason. They know what they're doing, and they can teach us a lot. I think I was a bit hesitant at the beginning because I was a bit ashamed of the fact I didn't have any experience. But actually, as soon as I started asking them questions, I learned so much faster. And I think I improved much faster too. So definitely don't hesitate, I think.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
Yeah,
embrace the fact that you're a beginner and learn from the best. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And going forwards, you're on your way back to Europe now as we speak. Have you got plans for the Moth sailing this year, or are you fully focused on the Mini and getting some more offshore miles?
I'm gonna do both. So until my Mini is ready, because we should have it. Well, the plan is for the Mini to be on the water end of April, beginning of May. I'm gonna do a bit of Moth training, then focus on my Mini season. So I've got my first races end of May, Then I have to qualify for the Sable Azur Sable. I'm doing the Mini Fastnet and the trophy map. Finally doing that SAS, so Sable d'Olonne, Azur, Sable d'Olonne on my Mini.
Yeah.
After which, the Mini is probably going to have to go back to the boatyard or something. There's going to definitely be some work on it to do. And then I'm going to focus a bit more on Moth sailing and try and do the Worlds in Argentina in November.
Oh, wow. So for the Worlds. That's
the plan.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. And is all of that Mini stuff, that's all single-handed, or is some of that double-handed, the races that you mentioned?
So the Fastnet is double-handed.
Okay.
So I have one single-handed, one double-handed. I wish the double-handed was first, but unfortunately it's not. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to train a little bit. So next week I'm going to train on another Mini with a friend who's doing it too. So it's not my boat, but I'm starting to get used to just the Mini circuit in general. Exactly.
Yeah. Even just getting used to sailing a boat that size and learning about autopilots and sail configurations. That'll be really cool and very exciting.
Thank you. Me too.
Well, Caroline, it's been fantastic catching up with you fresh off this first Atlantic crossing. And it's so exciting to hear about your Mini Transat project, and which is going to be shortly launched, and we'll be following you once you hit the water with that. So thank you again for taking the time to join us, and we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Well, that concludes this episode of the Sailing Show. It's been fantastic to catch Caroline fresh off her Atlantic crossing, and I really look forward to tracking her progress through the Moth and the Mini fleets in the future. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share this episode if you know someone who would benefit from listening. And please continue to follow the Magenta Project on our social media channels. To keep up to date on women's sport in general, not just sailing, check out Wisp Sports online and social media. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate you tuning in.